And so we reached back to the legislature and said, instead of you doing that, let us try and do that. We know what you want. What they wanted was more flexibility to do virtual court. And so we said, we understand the ins and outs of it better than you do. Let us draft the rules. Let us, give us a shot at trying to accomplish what you would like to do, and we'll try and do what you want to do, but make it so that it works. And so the Supreme Court promulgated the rules, and my understanding of it is that the court will set for itself whatever its basic manner of appearance is. For me, it's virtual. My baseline is it's going to be a virtual hearing. If someone wants to do something different than what the court's presumptive type of appearance is, all you have to do is elect to do what you want to do, and it's presumed that your election should be followed. That's the presumption. And then if the court doesn't agree with, doesn't want to allow the presumption, then there can be a hearing in the court. There's a whole bunch of factors the court has to consider before it doesn't follow the party's election or the party's decision. So really it's designed to let parties determine whether they're going to appear virtually or not. And one party wanting to be in person does not force another party to appear in person. So where my default is virtual, if someone demanded to be in person, that would not require the other party. It just would turn it into a hybrid hearing. It doesn't turn it into actually an in-person hearing completely. So
we might have Mr. Beach back with us.
Yeah, except he's still not able to get his camera on. I'm going to unmute him. Let's see. Mr. Beach, can you hear us? If you can, and if you're speaking, we cannot. Oh, he's logging in a second way.
Mr. Beach, can you hear? No, he disappeared.
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. They're doing heavy construction at our building, and I think they knocked the internet out, but I'm back.
Okay. While you were out, we were just discussing the new manner of appearance rules that took effect this week. And Mr. Weiser was, indicating that he does like virtual appearances, but some of the judges in Salt Lake have been less inclined to do virtual appearances. And now with these new rules, you can elect a different manner of appearance. If the court has set it as a in-person hearing, the interesting thing is you don't even have to file. They made it as easy as possible to elect to do it how you want to do it, because you don't even have to file a motion. You can just send a notice by email of how you intend to appear, and the court's supposed to accommodate that just based on your email. So if you look at those rules, they were designed to allow the parties to choose how they want to come to court, and to be able to do it with as little cost as possible. So if you like virtual hearings, there's now a way that you can do that, and it's presumptive that your client gets to choose how they appear. And like I was saying, there's a bunch of factors the court can consider if it wants to do something different, but it has to. Then it's not going to be incumbent on the judge to make a bunch of findings why that's not going to work in a particular case for a particular hearing. So anyway, something new. I think there definitely were a lot of opinions as COVID was going through. And as soon as we got started doing virtual hearings with COVID, I reached out to some of my colleagues on the Judicial Council and said, we need to start working on new appearance rules right now, because we move so slow in the courts to change rules. COVID's going to be over, and then there's going to be a big question about how we move forward with virtual and live hearings. And there was maybe there's an autocratic inclination in all humans, but immediately there were judges that wanted to dictate to everybody else how we would hold hearings, and that everybody would hold hearings the same way that that judge wanted to hold hearings. And my big push was, leave me alone and let me decide. How about this? Let's have a compromise. Each of you just do what you want and let me do what I want. And I made lots of arguments in councils about, Duchesne County is different. It takes 2 hours from Salt Lake to get to the Duchesne courthouse. And we've been able, the citizens of Duchesne County have been able to enjoy a lot broader representation. And I understand local attorneys probably don't love it, but the additional competition. But we've had many more attorneys from out of town appear in Duchesne County since we went virtual, because people can afford to hire an attorney if they don't have to pay them to drive. So it's been very good for us, I think. All right, enough of that. Let's go. We've got everybody back, and I was just asking Mr. Beach if there was anything preliminary to him calling his first witness.
At our last hearing, Your Honor, you instructed me to prepare a proper sort of what happened. And so I would plan to do that, and then I'll call my first witness.
Hey, go ahead.
But
Your Honor, if I may just interject, could I invoke the exclusionary rule at this time?
Yes. So for everybody listening, the exclusionary rule is a rule that makes it so that witnesses cannot listen to the testimony of other witnesses until after they themselves have been called to testify. So what that means is the parties themselves can be present during the testimony of the other witnesses. But apart from that, people who are not parties are going to have to turn off their device and not listen to the hearing until your attorney reaches out to you and says, okay, we're going to have you testify now. And then you can log back in and testify. So if there's anyone here who's listening to this hearing, and let me just see, I'm going to go ahead and look at our
I believe we have the children that were connected that would be testifying later. It may be easier if we're able to put them in a breakout room so they're not able to overhear.
All right. And let's see, how are they logged in? Elisa and James?
A computer.
All right, so what we'll do, let me just... Okay, Elisa and James, I'm going to put you in a breakout session. You're going to get an invite to go to that breakout session. If you'll just go there and remain there, we'll pull you back in when I need to speak with you, and that could be sometime later this morning. During this time, you shouldn't listen in on any device to the rest of this hearing. You'll just participate in the part where I speak with you, okay?
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and send you to that breakout session.
I think, Your Honor, would be Glenn Conger.
All right, and Glenn Conger is an attendee, so he's able to listen in. Mr. Conger, you are unable to, because of the exclusionary rule, unable to listen for now. And so what I'm going to do is just remove you from the hearing, and then we'll have a party text you or reach out to you when we're ready for you to log back in. You should not log back in as another person or listen on someone else's device until you're called to testify. Okay? I'll unmute you.
Okay.
Do you have any question about that?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll get back to you in a little while.
Okay.
It also appears, Your Honor, we have a Mr. Cody and a Mr. Jordan. I don't know if they're going to be testifying or just observing.
All right.
Yeah. Mr. Kuhn may, but I doubt it, but he should probably be excluded.
All right, Mr. Kuhn, we're going to ask you to please exit the meeting, and we'll get back to you if you're called to testify. So if you'd please log out at this time. All right. And then Jordan Fox, has he been called as a witness? All right. We won't do anything about that. All right. So they've logged out. All right. Looks like we're ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I represent Philip Potter. The parties have two minor children, Alyssa Potter, who is 16, James Potter, who is 14. In November 2023, the party's daughter was removed from Cassandra's home by Colorado Child Protective Services. And at the beginning of December 2023, the party's son was removed from Cassandra's home by Colorado CPS. The removal was based on sexually related and other allegations concerning Cassandra's husband, Glenn Conger. Following Colorado's removal of the children from Cassandra's home, Philip sought child protective orders against both Glenn and Cassandra based on the allegations underlying the removal. At the February 2nd, 2024 child protective order hearing, the juvenile court received testimony from the party's minor children, the children's aunt, Melinda Dennison, the children's cousin, Nicolette Hendrickson, the children's uncle, Daniel Payne, Colorado Child Protective Services agent, April Azevedo, and other witnesses that were called by Cassandra and Glenn. Aunt Mindy is Cassandra's sister, Uncle Dan is Cassandra's brother, and Nicolette Hendrickson is the children's adult cousin and Cassandra's niece. At the child protective order hearing, Aunt Mindy testified that Alyssa, the party's daughter, had made a disclosure to her while they were together on a girls' trip with other family members. Aunt Mindy testified that while on the girls' trip, Alyssa told her that Alyssa and Glenn Conger, had been downstairs cuddling, they'd fallen asleep, and that when they woke up, Glenn's hand was over Alyssa's vagina. Aunt Mindy testified that Alyssa made the same disclosure again the following Sunday while in the presence of her Aunt Mindy and Cassandra Conger. Aunt Mindy testified that when she addressed Alyssa's disclosures with Cassandra took no action, and for that reason, Aunt Mindy reported the child's disclosure to Colorado Child Protective Services. When the children were removed from Cassandra's home, the children were temporarily placed with Aunt Mindy. CPS informed Philip that the children had been removed from Cassandra's home, and then Philip took custody of the children. Nicolette Hendrickson, Cassandra's niece and the minor children's adult cousin, testified at the hearing, and she testified that she resided in Glenn and Cassandra's home from August 1st, 2023 to November 18th, 2023, just prior to the removal of the children. Nicolette testified that she stopped residing in Glenn and Cassandra's home due to circumstances within the home that made her feel uncomfortable. When Nicolette resided there, she slept in the corner of the basement at the home. Nicolette testified that while she was residing in Glenn and Cassandra's home, she observed Glenn and Alyssa cuddling on a makeshift bed on the floor in the basement on numerous occasions. Nicolette testified that Glenn and Alyssa would watch TV while spooning on the ground, or sometimes Alyssa would sit on Glenn's lap. Nicolette described the spooning as what would occur between Glenn and a significant other. She further described the spooning as Alyssa and Glenn laying down with Alyssa's back towards Glenn's front, with Glenn's arms draped around her, usually with a blanket over both of them. Nicolette testified that she observed this numerous times and described it as a common occurrence. Nicolette testified that Cassandra was usually upstairs when this occurred, but was downstairs once that Nicolette could recall. Nicolette testified that there was an occasion they were all driving to a bowling alley and Glenn attempted to remove Nicolette's bra. Nicolette was driving the vehicle and Glenn was sitting in the back behind her. Nicolette testified that Glenn spanked her on the buttocks, and Cassandra, upon seeing it, said that Nicolette wasn't used to those types of interactions. And to that end, Nicolette testified that she observed Glenn spank Alyssa, the party's daughter, and did so in a playful manner, i.e. not for punishment. Nicolette testified that there are 3 bathrooms in the Congers' home. One of the bathrooms didn't have a lock. That was the bathroom that Nicolette and Alyssa used. On 3 occasions, Glenn burst into the bathroom when Nicolette was in the bathroom, twice when she was using the restroom and once when she was in the shower. Each time Glenn stated, "Sorry, I thought you were Alyssa." Nicolette testified that Alyssa addressed the issue. Actually, I'll move on. Nicolette testified that Alyssa sat on Glenn's lap at a family dinner. Glenn's hand was on Alyssa's thigh. Nicolette testified it was memorable to her because it made her uncomfortable, and she thought it was a weird interaction for Glenn and Alyssa to have. Nicolette testified that she observed the children consume alcohol at a 4th of July party and later in July 2023 on a camping trip. She testified that Glenn was present at the time. Nicolette testified that she observed both children with a can in their hand and testified that she observed James drinking alcohol at the 4th of July party. Glenn was present and did nothing to stop James from consuming the alcohol. Uncle Dan testified that he was present at a party on July 4th, 2023, at which Glenn, Cassandra, and the minor children were also present. He testified that he observed Glenn touching Alyssa inappropriately, describing it as Glenn fondling Alyssa. Uncle Dan was so upset by the touching that he had difficulty using words to describe it, but testified that Glenn touched Alyssa in ways he would not touch his wife publicly. And when pressed further, Uncle Dan testified that he saw Glenn touch Alyssa over the clothing in the pelvic area. Alyssa testified at the Child Protective Order hearing that on a Saturday around November 2023, around 4 p.m., she and Glenn were downstairs watching YouTube on the computer. She was wearing pants, an oversized sweatshirt, and had a blanket over her. Alyssa testified that sometimes she and her stepdad sit close, and he rubs her back because her shoulder and back hurt. Alyssa testified that she and her stepdad sometimes lean on each other, and that this particular Saturday around 4 p.m. they both fell asleep. Alyssa testified that when she woke up, to Glenn saying, "Sorry, my hand was on top of where your vagina is," but Alyssa stated that it was over the blanket and over her clothes. Alyssa testified that she believed Glenn. Alyssa further stated that Glenn was raised to be truthful, that he was raised by the Oddfellows, and that the Oddfellows believe in truthfulness. Alyssa subsequently testified that after she and her stepdad woke up, they went to bingo, and it was then that Glenn told Alyssa that when she was still asleep, his hand was placed over her vagina, and that when he woke up, he moved his hand when he realized it was there. Alyssa testified that it was above blankets and everything like that. Alyssa reported that when she told her Aunt Mindy about it, that Aunt Mindy took it very wrong. Alyssa testified that she went to a clothing optional hot springs with Cassandra and Glenn. She testified that her mother and Glenn were wearing clothes at the hot springs. However, James, the party's son, testified that Glenn was not wearing clothes at the hot springs. Following evidence presented at the February 2nd juvenile court hearing, Judge Evershed issued a child protective order against Glenn Conger. He did not enter one against Cassandra Conger. The child protective order against Glenn Conger expired on July 4th, 2024. That's my proffer.
Okay. All right. Do you wish to call witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. I call Cassandra Conger.
All right. Ms. Conger, if you'll please raise your right hand and be sworn to tell the truth. Do you swear that the testimony you will give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Cassandra, I'm Cameron Beach. I represent Philip. Will you please state your name for the record?
Cassandra J. Conger,
What's your address?
1650 East 3rd Street, Delta, Colorado, 81416.
You were present at the hearing on Philip Potter's request for child protective orders, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were represented by an attorney at that hearing?
Yes.
And Mr. Conger was also at that hearing?
Yes.
And he was also represented by an attorney?
Yes.
At the hearing, did you hear Aunt Mindy's testimony?
Yes.
And did you hear Nicolette's testimony?
Yes.
And did you hear Uncle Dan's testimony?
Yeah.
Are you and Glenn married?
Yeah.
And when did you get married?
September 30th, 2022.
Have you and Glenn kept in contact since the child protective order was entered in February 2024?
Yes, just me and him.
Have you spent time together?
Just me and him.
Give me an idea of the nature of your interactions with Glenn since the February 2024 hearing.
Going fishing on his boat, go for a drive on the motorcycles, just talking, trying to figure out what we all need to do. You know, just trying to see what we're doing. And
Where does Glenn reside?
at his grandma's house.
Has Glenn spent any overnights in your home since entry of the child protective order in February?
No, sir.
Does Glenn still have belongings in the home?
Not in the home, but outside in his shop.
Have you filed for divorce from Glenn?
No, sir.
Do you intend to file for divorce from Glenn?
Not sure at this time.
Do you intend to allow Glenn to move back into your home?
Not really. Kind of just depends.
On what?
Well, on this hearing and the kids.
What do you mean by the kids?
No, this hearing, we're gonna go because we may be moving after this. It's hard to say.
Who may be moving after this?
Well, depending on what happens with the kids and me, we will be probably finding a place to stay.
Do you want Glenn to move back in the home?
It would be nice to be a family again, but we'll see what the stars say.
Do you think it would be appropriate for Glenn to move back in your home at this time?
Not at right now.
And why not?
Because we still have to go through counseling and talk and make sure everything's peachy keen. Our family is more important.
Do you believe that Glenn poses a risk to your children at present?
No, I do not.
Okay. Did you take a vacation in June 2024 with the kids?
I did.
Who went on the vacation?
Joyce Conger, Glenn Conger, the senior, Tony Conger, Kaiten Wilding, and Alyssa and James.
When did you finalize? I'm interested in when you planned the vacation.
Over a year ago.
Over a year ago?
Yep,
And did you stay in hotel rooms on the vacation?
we did.
When did you book the hotel rooms?
I didn't book the one in Mesquite until I think 2 to 3 nights before. Just kind of waiting for things, and I procrastinate a lot. My mother-in-law booked the hotels in San Diego.
Who stayed in your hotel room?
Tony and Kaiten, and my kids.
Did Glenn Jr. accompany you and the children on your vacation?
No, sir.
Was he there for any portion of it?
No, sir.
Had he, to your knowledge, ever previously planned to attend the vacation?
Yes, sir. Because it was before everything that happened.
Following the juvenile court hearing, you traveled to Vernal to pick up the kids from Phillips Care. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And Glenn's father traveled with you?
Yes, sir.
Are the kids still in touch with Glenn's father?
Yes, sir.
Do the kids go over to Glenn's parents' home?
No, sir.
In your memorandum opposing Phillips' motion for temporary orders, you state that the evidence will show Cassandra and Glenn have resided separate and apart ever since the juvenile court proceeding, Because Cassandra is still married to Glenn, however, and the children do have a long-standing positive relationship with him, they have attended some activities together, such as going to a public diner together. Do you recall making that? Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir.
And so it sounds that you acknowledge that after the child protective order was entered, you took the children to a diner with Glenn?
Yes, sir.
And was that on March 29th, 2024?
Whereabouts, yeah. Like,
I
remember
want to,
the date.
okay. I want to show you what's been marked as our Exhibit J. Your Honor, if I can be made a sharer. Thank you. Can you see this, Cassandra?
Just the Exhibit J.
Do you see the photograph?
Yes, sir.
And does the photograph show you and the minor children?
Yes, sir.
And is that Glenn?
Yes, sir.
And you have no reason to dispute that that was taken on March 29th of this year?
No, sir.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit J.
No objection.
Received.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as our Exhibit H. Representative, this is the child protective order that was entered against Glenn. Do you see it there?
Yeah.
Have you seen this document before?
No,
You've never seen it before?
I have not seen it.
Did you know that a child protective order was entered against Glenn?
Yes, sir.
And when did you know that?
Probably early March.
So before you went to the diner?
Yes, sir.
And I'll scroll down and just read paragraph 3. Except as provided in the parent time section below, the respondent is prohibited from harassing, telephoning, contacting, or otherwise communicating with the minor children in paragraph 1 directly or indirectly. Would you agree that Glenn seeing the children at the diner was a violation of this protective order?
Yes, sir.
And you allowed the children to go to the diner with Glenn, is that right?
Yes, sir.
I sent you some discovery requests last month or toward the end of July, which included some requests for admission. Your Honor, we offer Exhibit H.
I would object. I don't think this witness can lay the foundation for it.
I'll accept it on judicial notice. It's a court pleading that's been filed with the court. So she may not have ever seen it, and as a matter of fact, she has never seen it, but I will receive it.
Let me ask you some follow-ups. You testified that you knew that a child protective order was entered against Glenn, is that right?
Yeah.
And did you have an understanding that the child protective order prohibited Glenn from having contact with the kids?
Yeah.
Thank you. So like I was saying, I sent you some discovery requests and then you provided some responses. I'm going to show you what we've marked as Exhibit X here. You recognize this document, Cassandra? These responses to our first and second request for discovery.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And did you review your answers before your attorney sent them to me?
Yes, sir.
And are your answers to my discovery requests truthful and accurate?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit X.
No objection.
Received.
All right, so Cassandra, in my request for admission number 1, I asked you to admit that the photograph we looked at just a few minutes ago depicts the minor children with Mr. Conger at a time between the dates of February 5th, 2024 and July 4th, 2024. Do you recall reading that?
Yeah, vaguely.
Your response was admitted. Respondent was at a public diner with her husband and the children, directly supervising all of their interactions with each other. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So back to that statement, I just read directly from your memorandum opposing Philip's motion for temporary orders. You indicated that the children have attended some activities with Glenn. What other activities have the children attended with Glenn other than the diner?
That was the diner. That was the activity.
So is it your testimony that that's the only time the children have seen Glenn?
Yes, sir.
Back to Exhibit H. Paragraph 4 requires Glenn to stay away from the children's residence. Did you know that Glenn was prohibited from coming to the children's residence?
No, sir.
Okay. In any event, did Glenn come to your house at any time between the dates of February 5th, 2024 and July 4th, 2024?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge.
I'm going to pull up my discovery requests or your responses one more time here. So in interrogatory number 4, I said, describe in detail any steps you have taken to abate any safety risk posed by Glenn Conger to your and petitioner's minor children. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And your response was, out of an abundance of caution, I have not allowed Glenn Conger to have any unsupervised contact with my children since the Child Protective Order proceeding. By supervised, I mean direct line of sight and hearing. Glenn Conger has been residing separate and apart from us since the Child Protective Order hearing. He has come by the house on occasion to perform outside maintenance work, but has not entered the house.
Yes,
So,
sir.
You just testified that he hasn't come to your house, but you
No.
said,
But you said the dates. He hasn't come by between the dates of the protection order. He came by after. You said during the dates of the protection order.
okay, when did he come by?
July 5th to work on the air conditioner. What other day? Another day after that to help mow the lawn. I was there. Don't think my kids were there that day. If they were downstairs. Glenn did not enter the house. I think on any of those days.
James is 14,
Yes, sir.
and James went on this vacation with you in June.
Yes, sir.
And where did you all go on the vacation?
We went to Mesquite for that first night, and then we traveled the rest of the way to San Diego. We went to a safari park. We went to a zoo. We went to SeaWorld. And when we went back to Las Vegas.
Was James struck across the rear by a woman on that vacation?
That was a Heart Attack Grill. It was a restaurant on Fremont in Vegas, where if you do not, you get food, and he wanted to try to eat the three, it's like a huge hamburger, and it was, if you don't eat it all, there's food, games, thing. But he didn't have to. It was his choice. He's like, well, I can do this. I can handle this. So, because he watched his grandpa get smacked in the butt. Because his grandpa didn't finish.
I'll just show you the video real quick so the judge can see what we're talking about, but I have a question about it when we're done.
Yeah, it was just fun and games. I barely finished my food. I was so stuffed that night.
All right.
And it was not even like it was like a tiny little like tap. It wasn't even a spank like his grandpa or his aunt got.
And did you say this is called the Heart Attack Grill?
Yes, sir. It's a huge restaurant in Vegas that it's all hospital themed. We were trying to kind of, relax and have fun. And that waitress was super nice and sweet, and yeah, Alyssa didn't finish her food, and she chose that. She's like, I can't do this, so she didn't do it.
Can you hear this video, Alyssa, or can you just see it? I mean, Cassandra, can you just see it playing?
I can just see it, but I heard it.
I couldn't hear it over the
Yeah.
WebEx. I don't know about
Yeah, the WebEx audio didn't work. We've tried to do this with video before. I don't remember what the resolution of that was, but getting the audio to play over WebEx sometimes is problematic.
Okay. The reason I ask is there's someone in the background that says something to the effect of hit him harder or something. Do you remember who said that?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not like.
So Philip filed a petition to modify custody in this case. You're aware of that?
Yes, sir.
And I can pull it up if you want, but you may just remember it. So you state in your answer to the petition to modify at paragraph 30 that with regard to Glenn cuddling with Alyssa, you said the only cuddling that occurred was what would be considered typical between a stepfather and affectionate child. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
Do you think it's appropriate for cuddling of any kind to occur between Glenn and the children?
He's like a father to him. He's never done anything to not. I've seen multiple kids with their stepfathers cuddle.
What do you mean when you say cuddle?
Hugging, just laying on the chest,
Okay.
hand around the shoulder.
And Alyssa is a 16-year-old girl, is that right?
Yeah.
Where are you employed, Cassandra?
At Delta County School District. I'm a bus driver. I've been a bus driver
And in your financial declaration, you indicate that you earn a gross monthly income of $2,072.13 a month. Is that accurate?
Pretty dang close.
To the children since entry of the Child Protective Order on February 5th, 2024.
We have an understanding. We're gonna, do counseling if we need to. I kept them separate. I don't let them talk to him. Even now that they're like asking, because their protection order has been abated and, well, not abated, lifted. They miss going out on with him. I'm sorry, losing track. Just try to keep, go back into, sorry. Try to figure out my wording because I'm scared and nervous about today. So
Are you done with your answer?
I don't know.
And just to remind you, he was just asking what things you have done to abate any risk that Mr. posed to the children since the entry of the protective order.
Your Honor, if I may interject perhaps just the form of the question, could I clarify the witness understands what we mean by abate since
Certainly, let's define that just to make sure, because that's a legal word that is not commonly used.
But yeah, I'll just re-ask it. What steps have you taken, Cassandra, to make sure that the kids are safe from Mr. Conger?
Separate times, making sure that they're not around him right now. Just keeping them separate.
And is it your position that the kids should be allowed to be around him so long as you're supervising?
Yes, sir.
What's your work schedule like?
I start around 6 o'clock in the morning, get off about 8:30. Then I go back into work about 2:40 or 2:30, excuse me. I drive bus until about 5 and come home. And we do our homework or chores because we all have our animals that we take care of. So
And Mr. Conger's work schedule, does he work like a 5-day on, 5-day off work schedule?
4, 5, 5, 4. So he does 4 days on, 5 days off, or 5 days on, 4 days off.
So based on his work schedule and yours, if he's living in your home, there would be many times that you wouldn't be home to supervise him with the children. Is that a fair statement?
I do have a roommate, and he's there when I'm not there. So the kids will never be alone with him alone.
What, to your knowledge, so you mentioned counseling before. Has any counseling taken place up to
I've
now?
been working uber hard. The place I want to go to, their computer systems have been down. I'm just waiting for a call back. But we want to go to counseling. I just been trying to figure out times and dates and making sure that we can all be there.
And what in your mind would counseling achieve?
Getting back to our everyday lives, coming back as a family, making sure that everybody understands, like how to be around each other, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, just all of that. And just being able to communicate again like we used to.
And to your knowledge, and if you don't know, just tell me, but to your knowledge, what steps has Mr. Conger taken to get rid of the risk that he poses to the minor children?
I'm unsure.
Thanks. Those are all my questions for you.
All right. Mr. Weiser, any, and if there's, I don't know if it messes with anybody's strategy for trial, but Mr. Weiser, you could do cross, and then I think you could probably also do direct. Do you have any problem with him doing direct as well, Mr. Beach?
None at all, Your Honor.
Mr. Weiser, if you'd like to ask all your questions, you can, or if you just want to do cross now and do direct later, that's fine.
I always appreciate efficiency, Your Honor, so I appreciate that option. Ms. Conger, thank you for being here today. I'm aware this is very emotional testimony for you. I want to follow up on some of the questions that Mr. Beach asked you to get some additional information. So just to clarify that we all heard and understood your testimony correctly, have you at any point allowed your children to have any unsupervised contact with Mr. Conger since the Child Protective Order hearing in February of this year?
No, sir.
Now, you heard the proffer earlier from Mr. Potter's counsel about some of the testimony that was given in the juvenile court. Were all these issues that he brought up raised at the time of the trial in the juvenile court against you?
Yes, sir.
And so other than whatever Mr. Potter's alleging has happened since the juvenile court trial, fair to say that all the allegations in his motion for temporary orders were already heard at the juvenile proceeding?
Yes, sir.
And the outcome of the juvenile court proceeding was there was or was not a child protective order issued against you?
There was not a child protective order against me.
During the juvenile court proceeding, did you have access to the case file for your husband, Glenn?
I did not.
Did you ever receive a copy of the child protective order pertaining to him from the juvenile court?
I did not.
I take it you've received the order that dismissed the protective order against you.
Sir.
Up until you were provided a copy of Glenn's protective order as part of this litigation with your former husband, Mr. Potter, had you ever seen what that order stated?
No, sir.
What was your understanding at the time of that visit in the diner, what the order said? And then I'll follow up with how did you find out about that?
I thought that he just couldn't go to the school or be at the house or shouldn't have contact with the kids.
And what was the basis for that belief?
Just off of hearing some things, I'm kind of new to the whole
If you had had a copy of the child protective order that existed at that time that was discussed in court today, would you have followed that strictly?
Yes, sir.
And assuming whatever the court's order is today, are you going to follow that order strictly?
Yes, sir.
During that visit at the diner that we discussed, was there any point in time that you were not within sight and sound supervision of the children?
I was always right there. I can either see him or hear him. I didn't leave the table when he was there. I would only leave the table when he went up to go get food, and I went up and got food when Glenn got food.
So other than eating at this diner, was there anything that happened before or after that visit?
No.
Other than eating food, I mean, what were the two of you, or I guess all of you, talking about?
The kids just really wanted to, talk to him about the order that they heard, because they miss him, and they just wanted to. Alyssa just needed a clarification. I mean, that was a pretty hard thing on her. She felt guilty that it happened, which a child should never feel guilty of. Then we started talking about the future, trying to figure out how we could come back, trying to figure out, because we've been talking about Alaska, prior to try to do a vacation up in Alaska because we kind of want to go see the Northern Lights and whatnot, or if we're gonna do a cruise or just trying to, because we all loved each other and he's been a really awesome guy to the kids and taught them a lot.
Well, let me ask it this straightway. Have you ever witnessed Glenn doing anything abusive or harmful to your children?
No,
Have the children ever made any disclosure about any inappropriate touching or other inappropriate behavior on his part?
no,
There was talk earlier about cuddling that would happen. In your opinion, based on what you saw, if you saw your former husband, Philip, doing the exact same thing that you had seen Glenn do, would that cause you any concern?
absolutely not.
Now, I understand there was talk about an investigation that was done earlier in the case by Colorado Child Protective Services. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
And that there was an initial removal. I take it the kids were brought back at some point.
yeah.
What was the outcome of that Child Protective Service investigation?
That nothing was founded.
Objection, foundation, out of the scope of what we're dealing with today. Was all juvenile proceeding.
All right, if she can lay foundation for it, I'll allow it because I think it is relevant to the considerations today.
Mrs. Conger, were you present at the juvenile court trial when we heard in-court testimony from the caseworker?
Yes,
And based on your recollection of the caseworker's in-court testimony, what was the outcome of that Colorado investigation?
that they couldn't find anything on him. That it was just wording that they all, took took it out of context, and ran with it.
And to the best of your knowledge, are you aware of law enforcement in either Utah or Colorado ever pressing any charges either against you or against Mr. Conger for
No.
anything in regards to this?
No charges, nothing.
Are you aware of any charges or CPS investigation about anything that's alleged to have happened since the juvenile court trial?
No, nothing.
Now, you had a conversation, I assume, about the upcoming summer vacation plans during that visit at the diner. Am I assuming correctly?
We were because we were trying to, come back, but
Well, what was the plan that everyone discussed?
we were gonna try to do some motorcycle rides, go to a couple restaurants because we didn't have the money to go anywhere farther. The San Diego was one of them, but we couldn't do that because of the protection order. So we were trying to figure out another time where we can all do that as well, maybe because
Well, let me rephrase my question. I think it was ineloquently asked. Was there any discussion about Glenn accompanying the children on any future vacations?
not for this year. It was just farther down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road.
Did you have any conversations about what I would call a safety plan to deal with these concerns that were brought up by the juvenile court?
Yeah, I was just we talked about boundaries, more boundaries.
Would you elaborate on that?
That if they're downstairs, I'm downstairs. They're on different couches. No more cuddling. Just being there. Not letting them be alone.
Would it be accurate to say that this would be line of sight and sound supervision at all times?
Yep.
You were questioned by Mr. Beach earlier about plans for counseling. Could you just summarize kind of what you've done to move that plan forward?
I had to fill out paperwork. I put that in, but their computer system's still down.
Who did you fill out paperwork for?
Access Health. Me and the kids went there before when they were younger because they had PTSD, same as me, with everything that kind of happened beforehand, with the moving back and forth from household to household, because hard due to co-parenting. I had TD from the marriage with Philip. So it was just a place that I've already felt comfortable with. The kids kind of already knew that environment. And so that's the place I really wanted us to go to. I did also call a couple other places, but they haven't called me back.
Have you had any conversations with your husband, Phil, about counseling therapy options?
He did ask me, I want to say probably the end of May for family counseling. And I said, sure, why not? And then never heard anything else back from him.
Did he propose any agencies or therapists?
No, sir.
What else, if anything, have you done to follow up on that process?
Just talking with the kids, trying to convince them that they do need to go. I mean, they're teenagers. They are really more bigger than I am, especially our son. He's a tall boy. Trying to just say, this will help us. This will help you understand kind of what's happened and work through some of the issues that have arisen with, and not always just bottle it up, because bottling emotions up can cause more harm. And so I've been working with the kids, and I have been talking more. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Talking more. They've been way more open with me. And so, I mean, that's been very helpful. They've always been open with me, but they've kind of started saying some things that I just found out about their visitation. So
When you say their visitations with who?
with their how
Hearsay.
We're going to have them testifying today, I would know. And I think right now it's just for the effect on the listener. We're not offering it for the truth.
And what's
of the
the
matter,
effect on
sir.
the listener here?
I think my client was answering that. I don't know the answer myself, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it'd have to be for a purpose where the effect on her was relevant, and I don't know what that is.
And Your Honor, I think where I'm going with this line of questioning is kind of what she's doing to address these safety concerns, make sure that children are on board with therapy process. So the kids have concerns, what is she doing to alleviate that so they're part of this healing process?
I'm
I'll let her go ahead, but I'll try and see if that weighs into the effect on the listener. Otherwise, I'll disregard it for any other purpose.
If I may admonish the witness, I'm not looking for what the children specifically told you, just generally if there were concerns, and what did you do in response to those concerns?
So with their concerns, I talked it through. I would ask them what their concerns were, and I would say, if somebody was kind of up, I'm like, okay, well, if somebody was upset about something, I'd ask them, okay, well, what happened beforehand? I would then say, okay, well, what was your attitude too? Like if you said something kind of mean, it didn't sound right, then of course you're going to get reprimanded for it. I would just kind of try to talk through things that would happen and then try to figure out their standpoint, and then the other person's standpoint as either a parent, aunt, uncle, whatever it was, to see their side of it too. I've always tried to figure out other people's sides to bring in so that the kids might understand a little bit more about being, they would call it punished. So I just tried talking it through, trying to figure out what was the best way to try to get them to understand, well, this is why you were punished, or this is why, or I'd be like, actually, I don't know why that happened. And I would apologize for them.
All right, Ms. Conger, let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay, sorry.
Since the Child Protective Order hearing, I mean, have you sat down with the kids and had a conversation, what we might call the good touch, bad touch conversation? What's acceptable, what's not, and what they need to do if some sort of caregiver figure is touching them inappropriately?
Yes, I did that as soon as they got back home with me. We were talking about what's okay, what's not okay, what to, like, if somebody does that to you, either come find me. If I'm not right there, of course I will stop it. If I, which I never saw anything. And then I would say, if you can't find somebody right then and there, you call the cops, please walk away, get out of the house, and go to a public place.
And can you be more specific on what you have told the kids would be inappropriate touching?
Inappropriate touching is anything private. Anything private. Sorry, I'm trying to remember everything I kind of told them. They can't hold you for more than a few seconds or minutes. They can't hold you for minutes. Of course not. No kissing. I'm sorry.
Take your time. Take a breath if you need to.
No more rubbing. No, can't have rub backs. He can hold you around the arms. I don't know what else. Right? I'm sorry. I don't know what else.
That's fine. I think you answered my question. Thank you. Want to switch gears again and talk about this heart attack grill that you were describing earlier, the place in Las Vegas. I think your testimony established this was kind of a themed restaurant. You had to eat this very large hamburger, and apparently the theme was if you didn't finish your meal, you could choose to have one of the workers there paddle your butt. Is that the gist of it?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this wasn't something you had to do or else.
No, yeah. It was your option. They had different size hamburgers for you to do, and James was like, well, I can eat 3 patties, but they were actually a full half-pound patty each.
So were there other children there participating in activities like this?
My daughter, she just did the single like me, because we're like, we're going to make sure we can eat our food. But even Alyssa couldn't even finish one hamburger at all. But she chose not to get spanked. James was like, I can do this.
Was this an adults only place, or were there other children under 18 present?
There were other children there as well.
Were there other families and children who were getting paddled if they didn't finish their meals?
The kids didn't because they chose not to, but the parents did.
And did you observe at any point anything that looked like they were trying to paddle with the intent of causing injury?
No, sir.
And afterwards, I mean, were there any signs of injury to your son from this paddling that we witnessed?
No, sir. Not even a red mark.
Be just one moment, Your Honor. I'm just checking my notes to see if there was anything else. Ms. Conger, did the juvenile court, to the best of your recollection, provide you with any guidance or instructions on what the plan was after the Child Protective Order expired under its own terms?
No.
Would it be fair? Sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
I was just hoping, to start going back and do counseling before and just move forward. I hate looking at the past.
Is it a correct assumption on my part that whatever guidance and orders the court provides today about safety plans, et cetera, you will strictly follow?
Yes, sir.
And if it comes down to the court saying, I have concerns about Mr. Conger still, and as a condition of you retaining custody, he is not to have contact whatsoever with these children, would you obey that restriction?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Your Honor, I don't have further questions for the witness.
Thank you, Mr. Weiser. I have one. Ms. Conger, you mentioned right at the outset that you had been married to Mr. Conger since September 30th, 2022. Did you, what was your relationship with him like prior to that date? Did you guys live together? Had you dated? How long has Mr. Conger known the children?
For 3 years, 2 or 3 years before we got married. We did move in, a year, I want to say a year and a half, maybe, move in with him before we got married.
All right, so the children have known him longer than just since September 30th, 22.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see if I had anything else. What has been the parent time schedule in the most recent couple of years? How long have you lived? Where did you say you live in Colorado?
In Delta.
All
It's
right.
like Grand Junction.
Is that like five hours away from Vernal?
Like 3.5.
Okay. What's
Sometimes 4, depending on weather.
what has the parent time schedule been since you lived in Delta?
It's always been, ever since I moved here in 2010, it's been every other weekend. And then it's supposed to be 4 consecutive weeks in the summer.
So you've exercised fairly close to statutory parent time, even though it's a long ways away.
We've been trying our hardest.
Okay. All right. Thanks. All right, Mr. Beach, any cross-examination on the things that were asked by Mr. Weiser?
Yes, Your Honor. Just to clarify, you testified on direct examination, Cassandra, that you knew at the beginning of March that Glenn was not to have contact with the minor children. You recall testifying to that?
Yeah.
And then he had contact at the end of March, correct?
Yeah.
And you had conversations about a future with Glenn with the minor children present. Is that right?
Yeah.
And your attorney asked you about things the caseworker said at the juvenile court hearing. You recall that?
Yeah.
And despite whatever the caseworker said, you agree that Judge Evershed entered a child protective order against Glenn Conger, correct?
Yeah.
Taking steps to secure this counseling that you've talked about today.
Well, I've been going back and forth with it for quite some time. So I can't give you an exact date.
The last month?
No, beforehand. I've been trying and I was busy.
So you've been trying for a long time and it just hasn't come to fruition, correct?
Yeah.
And when we've talked a lot about this spanking, but let me just clarify. So James chose to get spanked and you deferred to James on that decision, correct?
I'm sorry?
You let James make the decision to get spanked. Is that right?
Yeah.
Thanks. Those are all my questions.
All right. Okay, next witness.
Glenn Conger.
If I could request a
Oh.
restroom break before we move
Yes.
on.
Why don't we go ahead and take 10 minutes?
And
Thank you, Your Honor.
during the 10 minutes, either Mr. Weiser or Ms. Conger, could you please let Glenn know to log back in?
Ms. Conger, would you take the laboring oar on that?
I'll text him.
Thank
Okay.
you.
We'll be back at 10:27-ish.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, we're back from recess. And Glenn Conger is online. Mr. Beach, I assume you want to call Mr. Conger next.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Conger, are you able to hear us?
Yes, Your
All
Honor.
right, and are you able to turn on video?
I'm trying to start. Yes, I will.
Mr. Beach, go ahead.
Mr. Conger, I'm Cameron Beach, Philip Potter's attorney. Will you please state your name for the record?
Glenn Conger II.
And what's your address?
My address is 1650 East 3rd Street, Delta, Colorado.
Is that where you're currently residing?
No,
Where do you reside?
I live with my grandparents. 1442 Deer Run Road, Delta, Colorado.
What is your relationship to Cassandra Conger?
She is my wife.
Were you present at the hearing on Philip Potter's request for child protective orders against you and Cassandra on February 2nd, 2024?
Yes,
And were you represented by an attorney at that hearing?
yes,
And you understand that a child protective order entered against you on February 5th, 2024 following that hearing?
yes,
And did your attorney provide you with a copy of the child protective order after it was entered?
yes,
And did he provide it to you on the same day that it was entered?
yes, I believe so.
Okay, so let's take a look at that child protective order. I'm pulling up what's been marked as Petitioner's Exhibit H. And do you recognize this document, Mr. Conger?
Yes,
Is this the child protective order that was entered against you?
yes,
Okay. Received.
I believe the court received it under judicial notice.
Thank you. Alyssa and James Potter are the individuals protected under this child protective order. Is that right, Mr. Conger?
yes,
And do you agree that this child protective order was in effect against you from February 5th, 2024 through July 4th? The child protective order at paragraph 3 states, except as provided in the parent time section below, the respondent is prohibited from harassing, telephoning, contacting, or otherwise communicating with the minor children in paragraph 1, directly or indirectly. Did I read that right, Mr. Conger?
yes.
What did paragraph 3 mean to you?
Just no contact at all.
I want to pull up what's been marked as Petitioner's Exhibit J. We talked to Cassandra about this. This is a photograph of Cassandra and the minor children, and is that you in this photograph as well, Mr. Conger? We established that this photograph was taken at the end of March. Does that comport with your memory of when you were at this diner?
Yeah,
Do you agree?
sometime in March, yes.
Do you agree that you being with the minor children at some time in March was a violation of the child protective order?
Yes.
So my question to you is, if you knew that, why did you go ahead and violate the child protective order on this date?
I made the decision to meet them there and have dinner with, and I didn't think it was a bad thing. They wanted me there.
Describe all interactions you've had with Alyssa and James from between February 5th, 2024 and July 4th, 2024.
I drive. That's the only time I ever seen them. I haven't been around them even since now. 'Cause I believe they're happy where they're at. I mean, they want. Cassandra keeps telling me they want to meet me. I mean, I know the protection order's off, but now we're in this. Custody.
Sorry, are you finished with your answer?
Your
Yeah.
Honor, I think we might be having some lag with Mr. Conger's testimony.
Are you there, Mr. Conger?
Yes, I can hear you guys clearly.
Okay. Have you, between February 5th, 2024 and July 4th, 2024, did you ever go over to where Cassandra lives?
No. After July 1st, yes, I have been there a few times to mow the lawn and help with the maintenance house.
And have you interacted with the children when you were over there doing some household stuff?
No. The kids, usually when I went over there, were in school or they were gone. She would take them other places when I came over.
All right. To your knowledge, did your parents and Cassandra and the kids go on a vacation in June?
Yes.
And did you go on that vacation?
No.
When did you learn of the vacation?
I learned it about a week before. I had plans for that week when they went on vacation. So I stayed home and watched over my parents' house and helped with my house.
And why did you ever have plans to go on the vacation with Cassandra and the children?
No. That vacation for my work schedule, I have to plan it almost a year ahead. Beginning of January, we got to lay out all our weeks of vacation that we're taking.
And my understanding is they went on the vacation from June 6th to June 13th. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, that was about right. They came, parents and them, well, I don't know, Cassie and them did come back on the 13th, but I was over at my parents' house.
So I'll represent to you that actually, where are you employed, Mr. Conger?
I'm employed at West Elk Mine of the Mountain Coal Company, LLC, and they are owned by Arch Coal Resources.
And I'll represent to you that I sent a subpoena to West Elk Mine requesting your work schedule. Did you know that I did that?
No.
And is it true that you requested the same days off for vacation that they were the same days that you requested off for vacation that Cassandra and the minor children went on their vacation?
To watch over the house.
Okay, so
I did not know they were going on the vacation until the week before. I knew my parents were going on a vacation, so I planned it then.
And when did you request those days off work?
Like I said, it is the end of January.
And why did you need to take days off work to watch your parents' house?
because they have animals to take care of and to watch the plants outside the garden.
I mean, when you're working, when you're on your days on, are you gone for overnights or do you come home at night?
I come home at night, but I work between 14 to 16-hour shifts.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I have your testimony correct. You never planned to go on the vacation with Cassandra and the children, is that correct?
Yes,
But you took those same dates off work anyway to watch your parents' house.
yes, because that was the plan, to watch their house.
Have you been arrested in the last 6 months, Mr. Conger?
Yes,
And when were you arrested?
it was April 22nd, I believe.
And what were you arrested for? Of 2024?
Yes,
And what were you arrested for?
supposedly a violation of child protection, or not, a restraining order.
The one that Judge Evershed issued?
No,
Okay, what other restraining order was in effect against you?
so in December, Cassandra put a restraining order on me just against Alyssa, and they the when she did it, because of her lawyer advised her to do it to help with the case, what was going on.
Okay. This is always an adventure. So I want to make sure I understand this. So in addition to the child protective order that Judge Evershed entered against you, there was an additional restraining order entered against you in Colorado. Is that right?
Yes,
That was requested by Cassandra.
yes,
And then you were arrested in April for violating the restraining order that Cassandra requested against you.
yes.
And did that restraining order that Cassandra requested against you prohibit you from having any contact with the minor children?
It was, yes, and the request was I had to stay 10 yards away from her and the high school.
And so what did you do to violate that, which led to your arrest?
After all the court and everything we went through, it was supposed there was no evidence of me being on the property. So they bench warrant, I had to arrest, and because they usually your restraining order is the household or where the protected person lives, but how the restraining order was written was just between me and her, only 10 yards away.
And are your criminal charges for violating that restraining order still pending?
No,
What was the resolution of those charges?
they are sealed.
Did you plead guilty?
No,
What did you plead?
they are sealed, so there's no more record of them.
Did you admit that you had violated the restraining order?
I admitted that I was on the property getting tools, but
Okay.
by the restraining order was not, I was allowed to be there.
And when were you on the property getting those tools?
And see, that was like March 11th, I want to say early March, when supposedly this call got called in.
Of 2024?
Yes.
And were you over at the property on March 11th, 2024 getting tools?
Yes, I was.
Okay. So I want to go back to this child protective order. Paragraph 4 says the respondent is ordered to stay away from the children's residence and any subsequent residence of the minor children. So am I understanding you right that you were over at the children's residence on March 11th?
Yes. To pick up some tools so I can go back and work on my vehicles at my parents' house.
And you admit that being over at the residence is therefore a violation of this child protective order?
What? Being
If you went to the child's residence on March 11th, that would be a violation of this child protective order. Is that right?
Yes, I didn't understand that when I went over there. I understand the child residence because I wasn't staying there. I just went over to get tools.
Did Cassandra know that you had come over to get tools?
Yes, but I was there for like 2 minutes grabbing tools and then I left.
Did you see the kids while you were there?
No, they were in school.
Okay. I want to sort of cut to the chase here and ask you a very pointed, direct question. What steps have you taken to get rid of the risk that you pose to these kids since Judge Evershed entered the child protective order against you?
I have just stayed away from the house and stay away from the kids because I don't see there's any endangerment of the kids.
You haven't gone to any counseling, is that fair?
Yes, no, I have not.
You haven't undergone a psychosexual evaluation or anything similar to that, correct?
No.
Have you, other than this diner meeting that you had with the kids, have you made any other attempts to see the kids between February 5th and July 4th?
No.
What has Cassandra told you the future looks like as far as you seeing the kids?
She has told me that she wants us back in to be a stronger family. The kids want me there. They enjoy me. We get to go do stuff. And they believe nothing happened. Nothing is sexually happened to them. There's no abusive or anything. There's one incident and nobody, it's all been here in Colorado investigated and nothing was found.
Has Cassandra ever told you that she considers you to be a risk to the kids?
No.
Has she ever told you that she considers you to not be a risk to the kids?
Yeah, I believe she says that I'm not a risk at the kids at all.
And when was the most recent time she said that?
Oh, probably a few months ago.
After Judge Evershed entered the child protective order?
Yes.
Do you intend to be around the children in the future?
Yes. Because they are my children. I am under my wings to teach them stuff.
Do you think that any time you spend with the children should be supervised?
No.
Thank you so much, Mr. Conger. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Weiser, questions? And again, any that you have direct as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Conger, thank you for being here today. I want to follow up on some of the answers that you gave to Mr. Beach's questions. You mentioned there was a time on or about March 11th of this year that you went to the house where Cassandra and the children live. Did you discuss with Cassandra in advance that you were coming over? Or did she find out when you showed up?
I believe I texted her or called her that I was going to come over the next day, but I didn't tell her what time or anything.
And what was her response to that?
She said, okay, just make it quick.
Was there any conversation about the children being there?
No, because when it happened, they were at school.
And remind me again the reason why you were coming by the house.
To grab tools to work on a vehicle.
Were these work tools or just something for a personal project?
It's a personal project.
Did you reach out to your own lawyer beforehand about whether you should do this or any questions about what was allowed under the existing order?
No, I did not.
You were asked about whether you intend to be around the children in the future and whether your time with the children should be supervised. If the court today orders that any contact you have with the children be supervised, would you comply with that?
Yes.
What do you understand supervision to mean?
Supervision is another adult or law enforcement there watching over the activities.
Do you understand that to be a requirement that the supervisor be within sight and sound of you at all times?
Yes.
If the court orders that there be some sort of counseling or therapy, would you cooperate with that?
Yes.
Have you had any conversations with Cassandra's former husband, Philip Potter, about any of these issues or arranging counseling of any kind?
No.
I don't have any further questions for Mr. Conger, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Beach, anything on those items?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Conger, you're free to go. You're also free to remain if you'd like to just turn off your device. I'll probably just move you back. Let's see, probably just move you back into the attendee list.
Thanks, Your Honor.
All right. Okay, Mr. Beach, do you have another witness?
Philip Potter, Your Honor.
All right, Philip Potter. Mr. Potter, please raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you will give in this matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, state your name for the record.
Philip W. Potter,
Address,
1572 West, 500 North, Vernal, Utah.
and you are Cassandra's ex-husband.
Yes, sir.
Where are you employed?
I'm employed with XCM,
And what do you earn per hour?
$36 an hour.
You work full-time?
Yes.
And did we do some math prior to the hearing today?
Yes.
And 36 an hour equates to a gross monthly income of $6,240.
Yes.
Are you concerned for the safety of your children, Philip?
Yes.
Why?
Because she's been letting Glenn be around the kids. It doesn't matter if it's supervised or if it's not supervised. There shouldn't be no contact at all.
And why do you feel that way?
Because I heard that he was cuddling with my daughter.
I'm going to object to hearsay at this point, Your Honor.
So, I'm going to allow it for effect on the listener. Mr. Beach is asking why he's taking this action and why he doesn't think the children should be with his ex-wife. And all of this came through testimony that he heard at the child protective order. And so I'm not taking it as evidence that he has seen any of these things go on. The only evidence I have of that so far is the proffer made about what the testimony was at the child protective order. And Mr. Potter did not provide testimony that he'd seen anything happen. He just said that he heard that it happened, and that's the reason why he is trying to get custody. So it'll be effect on the listener. Go ahead.
Okay, can you ask me again?
Why are
I'm concerned because I heard that he has touched my daughter and that he rules with an iron fist.
where would the children go to school if the judge ordered custody?
I would try to get them at Terra Academy. If not there, they'll go to Uinta High.
And would you discuss those things with Cassandra before you did them?
Yes,
Can you provide a safe place for the children to live if the judge orders a change in custody?
yes,
Do you love your children?
very much.
Are you able to provide for them financially?
Yes,
Have you historically exercised parent time with your children?
yes,
Are you able to provide for their physical, emotional, and medical needs?
yes,
Are you emotionally stable?
yes,
Do you have any drug or alcohol or substance abuse issues?
none.
And are you married
Yes,
to,
Leilana Rosalie Potter.
and how's the kid's relationship with Leilana?
Great.
How would you describe your bond with the children?
When they're here, really awesome, and that they're always happy. We're always doing stuff together.
And are you asking that the court award you temporary custody of the children after today's hearing?
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that the kids should have any contact with Glenn Conger whatsoever?
No.
And do you believe that getting temporary custody to you is in the kid's best interest?
Yes.
And did you hear Cassandra testify earlier about you speaking with her about counseling?
Yes.
Have you sought counseling for the kids?
Yes.
Tell me what happened and when.
So I went to pick them up and
When?
in June, and we had to call an officer there, and I had a body cam. I had him do the footage of the body cam, and he said, "Hey, Alyssa said that I just don't understand Stander, and that's the reason why she don't want to come." And the officer recommended to do counseling. I told the officer, well, these guys don't really want to do counseling. And then they cut me off and said, yes, we would. So when they said, yes, we would, I started looking up counselors.
The kid said, yes, we would?
Yes.
Okay. And did you find a counselor?
Yes, in Grand Junction.
And did you set an appointment?
Yes.
And did you talk to Cassandra about counseling and getting the kids in?
Yes.
And did you tell her that you had found a counselor in Grand Junction?
Yes.
And then what happened?
She told me, well, that wasn't really up to her. That was more up to Alyssa to say yes or no, and James.
And was that the end of it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no. Alyssa said that she would do it. And then once I got the appointment set up, she said that she felt like she was being pressurized into doing counseling.
Okay. And then with regard to the counseling, it sounds like Cassandra's position was to defer to Alyssa on whether that went forward.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Philip. Those are all my questions.
All right. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Potter, thank you for being here today. So just to follow up, I believe the judge was correct in assuming that of all these things you've heard about Glenn supposedly doing to your daughter, you have not personally witnessed any of this, correct?
Correct.
Do you ever cuddle with your children?
What do you consider cuddling? I hug
What
them.
do you consider cuddling? Let's ask it that way.
So I consider cuddling is doing one arm around the back and holding onto the shoulder and squeezing them one-handed.
Have you ever done that with your daughter?
Yes,
Nothing inappropriate about that, would you agree?
nothing at all.
And I assume you don't touch her in any way in her private areas, correct, sir?
No,
You ever kiss your daughter?
on the cheeks and on the forehead.
And you would agree with me that's just normal affection between a parent and a daughter, correct?
Correct.
And hugs as well, normal affection between a parent and a child. Would agree with me?
One arm around the back hug, yes, where you can't touch any of the private parts.
Isn't it true that you previously told Cassandra that you were wanting to relinquish your parental rights?
Yes, but the same day I said never mind.
And isn't it true that the children don't want to be with you?
When they're here, they say they do, but when they're over there, they say they don't.
Isn't it true when the children come to visit with you, you take away their phones and won't let them communicate with their mother?
No, I take away their phones so I can spend time with them instead of them just watching YouTube. And her mother has my phone number and has my wife's phone number 100% of the time.
So if the children want to communicate with their mom, they would have to get your permission and go through you.
They could just come and ask for the phone and I would hand it to them.
Wouldn't you agree the children really don't have a strong bond with you, sir?
Would you repeat that?
Would you agree with me that your children do not have a strong bond with you?
I think they have an awesome bond with me.
Yet you reached out to Cassandra before and proposed relinquishing your parental rights.
Yes, I was kind of in a bad headspace. Yeah.
So fair to say there's been challenges in your relationship with the children.
The challenges has happened ever since Glenn has been in the picture.
So you have an axe to grind against Glenn personally, fair to say?
I don't have an axe to grind against Glenn.
But you blame him for all the challenges with your children.
I just have noticed that they have been more challenging since he's been in the picture.
And you haven't, in fact, exercised all of your parent time, have you?
I've been down there and tried to get them, and they won't come with me. I've had to call the cops multiple times, and I end up leaving because they get upset, and I don't feel like if upset would just be more traumatizing them coming with me.
Isn't it true that you've gone upwards of about 18 months without visiting with your children?
I visited with them over text.
But you chose not to see them in person.
They asked me not to come down.
Now, you talked about having some conversations where you proposed a therapist or counselor, I should say, in Grand Junction. Did I hear you correctly?
Yes.
And you say that you discussed this directly with Cassandra, right?
Yes.
Do you agree with me that you've never had your lawyer send me any type of letter saying, hey, Mr. Potter proposes a counselor in Grand Junction. What does your client say? Nothing like that's ever gone out.
Not that I know of, no.
And even in the motion that you filed with the court, you didn't propose in any way, hey, here's this great counselor I found in Grand Junction. Let's go with this person.
No.
So basically, we have no paper trail to corroborate what you're telling us today.
I have text messages.
And you haven't provided that to me. Would you agree?
I haven't provided it.
One moment, Your Honor. Isn't it true that when you went out to see the kids on or about May 24th of this year, you made a comment to your daughter about how she wasn't wearing a bra?
Yes.
Would you agree that's an inappropriate conversation for you to be having with a pubescent daughter like yours?
Officer was involved.
So that made it okay
And I-
for, sorry, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
An officer was involved, and I told her, I said, this was kind of a little inappropriate to come out of the house without clothes on, because you could see it pretty normal. And with another guy in the house, which is Cassie's roommate or whatever, that's Glenn's best friend. That's really inappropriate to be wearing around the house like that.
But you would agree she was wearing a shirt and her breast area was covered.
It was covered, yes.
Would you agree that's kind of an insensitive subject to be telling your daughter right in front of a police officer?
Well, I was just trying to tell her that, hey, this is inappropriate to even come out of the house, even if a cop is here.
Have you had conversations with the children about this case?
No,
You haven't mentioned anything about court going on to them?
no,
Have you told them you want them to come live with you full time?
no.
Would you agree that when the children get done talking with you on the phone, they're basically left in tears?
No, I don't agree to that.
Would you agree that when you talk with the kids that you're berating them?
What's braiding?
Talking down to them, criticizing them, would you agree with that characterization?
No.
I don't have further questions for this witness. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Beach, any redirect?
Just a few. Do you have stepchildren?
Yes.
Any female stepchildren?
2.
Do you let the female stepchildren sit on your lap?
No.
You ever put an arm around your female stepchildren under a blanket?
No.
Do you kiss your female stepchildren?
On the forehead.
When did you talk with Cassandra about relinquishing parental rights?
Probably about 2.5 years ago, before I even knew about this.
And has it been since entry of the Child Protective Order that the kids have shown some resistance in coming to parent time?
It was even before that.
And when was the period of time that Mr. Weiser asked you about when you went so many months without seeing the kids?
That was when Cassie moved in with Glenn, and they just started getting really crude and that, telling me to F off and that I'm a worthless dad.
And do you have an impression of why the kids sometimes resist parent time with you?
What's that?
Why do you have an understanding of why sometimes the kids don't want to come to parent time with you?
They've told me that sometimes because I'm abusive, but then they've told the officer the reason they think I'm abusive is because I don't pay my full amount in child support, or I didn't help Alyssa with a test.
Do you hit your children?
No,
Are you an abusive dad?
no.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
All right. Next witness.
Other than the children, Your Honor, those are all my witnesses.
Okay. Mr. Weiser, do you have any witnesses other than those who've been called?
Let me hear what the children have to say, Your Honor, because our witnesses would all be in the nature of rebuttal.
Okay. So I don't plan on having the children testify in the presence of anyone but me. I'm going to do a breakout room with them one at a time so they won't even hear each other's answers. I plan on picking and choosing. I've looked at both of your sets of questions, and I may not ask every single question, but I'm going to ask a number of those questions and maybe some of my own. But I'm not going to do it in the presence of any person because I don't want the children to feel like anything could be reported back. I don't want them to feel pressure about testifying on behalf or against either parent. And so that would be my mode of operation.
Your Honor, just for the record, I think the statute certainly gives the court broad discretion in this area. Just in case one party, though, dislikes what the outcome is, I think we would still need a record for appellate purposes, even if the court, for those reasons, doesn't have the parties or counsel listening in.
All right. And how is that record to be kept?
Your Honor, I kind of defer to the court's judgment. I assume we're doing this via WebEx, so I'm assuming that would be keeping a record. And the court could certainly say that would be made available later if there is some sort of appeal filed.
All right, we'll do it that way. All right, so let me see if the kids are still. They've logged off. So let's go ahead and ask them to log back in, and then I'll do a breakout room with them, and I'll just have each one of them be in the room alone while I visit with them.
And Your Honor, just to perhaps effectively frame the closing arguments that counsel and I would give, I certainly recognize we want to balance the children's right to privacy, but I think both of us would benefit of knowing your summary, Your Honor, kind of what you've learned from the children so we can frame our arguments accordingly. Okay. Is that something the court would be willing to do?
Maybe. I maybe can summarize. Again, I don't want to do anything that would, I don't want to put pressure on the children or have them feel that they're hurting the feelings of either parent in any way by anything that they may say. And so even me reporting back summaries of what they said might do that. So I'll see what I can do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. So I have now I have Alyssa and James. What I'm going to do, Alyssa and James, is I'm going to visit with each of you completely by yourself, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my computer and your computer into a separate breakout room, and then I'd like you to be alone in the room where you are, just one at a time, have everyone else leave the room and not be listening in, and I'll just visit with each of you one-on-one. The reason that I'm doing that is I don't want you to feel any pressure to testify one way or the other, or to feel like you are betraying a parent, or I want you to be able to be open with me without feeling like that you have to take sides against anyone. Okay?
Okay, good.
So why don't I visit with Alyssa? Alyssa, are you the oldest?
Yes.
All right, I'll visit with Alyssa first, and then with James after that.
That door ain't loud at all. Okay.
And then let me move you and I into a breakout room so that it's just us.
All right.
All right. I think what I'll do is take the attorneys into a breakout with me for just a minute and give you encapsulation of what I've learned from the kids after having asked your questions and a few others, just so that you know in general what's there. Okay, so I'll just do a breakout session with counsel and me, and then Mr. Beach, if you just speak with me privately, that'd be great.
Yes, Your Honor.